If by the title you were expecting a historical video about a crisis that occurred in the 1960s, sorry, this is not that. But what it is a story about a guy whose family immigrated to the USA with barely any personal belongings. Then their grandson becomes a professional race car driver when he grows up, a sport notorious for how expensive and hard it is to become immersed in. And one of the reasons it is so complicated is that it usually requires financial support from a sponsor to help pay for you to race, and even some of the most successful drivers can have problems securing one of those. But not this guy, because as of this year, his sponsor persuaded him to not retire and continue to carry their brand on his car. Truly an anomaly in modern racing. This anomaly was born Aric Michael Almirola on the 14th of March in 1984, the youngest of 4 boys born on the Eglin Air Force Base in Fort Walton, Florida, as his father was serving the United States Air Force. A lot of the foundations of Aric's life were set down by his grandparents. His passion for racing came greatly from his maternal grandfather, and the reason why he was born in the USA is because both sets of his grandparents took a gamble to leave their homes in Cuba. Aric's father, Rafael Almirola Jr., was born in 1962 and immigrated to the USA at age 4 with his parents and little brother Roberto. His mother, Anita, and father Rafael Sr. had decided to flee on the Freedom Flights program in order to move to Florida and escape the political climate of their home country. It was not an easy decision to make. Besides leaving some family members, they were not poor. Anita could make and sell clothing, and Rafael repaired TVs, but they agreed to give up all their possessions, aside from the clothes on their back and personal effects they could carry, in order to fulfill the stipulations of the Castro government to be allowed to leave the country. Once in Florida, they would move into a small house totaling 11 family members who had made the journey prior. Rafa Sr. would pick oranges for money until he found another job repairing TVs. They say that their story is just one of millions. Once in their new home, they felt a sense of hope and patriotism, and young Rafael Jr. would grow up and serve 4 years in the U.S. Air Force as an environmental control specialist before becoming a firefighter. He would also be involved in the racing world. He would build, sell, and race radio-control hydroplane boats, but he would also act as crew chief for his father-in-law's sprint car. Aric's mother, Bobby Almirola, is a well-educated woman who helps support her family by working in the financial management of the University of South Florida. It was also her father who was greatly responsible for getting her son interested in racing. Her family, too, had immigrated to the USA from Cuba several years before her husband's family. Her father was Slammin' Sammy Rodriguez, a notable sprint car racer in the area. He was not only a 3-time Tampa Bay area champion with 90 career wins, but also the owner of a racetrack. Funding racing isn't cheap, and when it was only himself, he funded his ventures with his auto body business. But in order to help pay for his sons and Aric's racing, he made his own racetrack after he retired. Dirt Devils Speedway in Land O'Lakes, Florida was his brainchild, but of course, in order to make money, he, his sons, and Aric and his father had to work the track if they wanted a return on the investment. Aric's grandfather had just started sprint car racing around the same time he was born, so from a very young age, Aric was spending time at the track with his family watching their grandfather race. He says no doubt he was his grandfather's biggest fan. Away from the track, Aric grew up in Tampa, got an education at Villa Madonna Catholic School, complete with actual real nuns, and loved to play other sports. A little bit of bowling, but baseball was his biggest interest. He collected cards, played in the Little Leagues in the Tampa area, and was even promoted to the All-Star team when it came time. Due to the climate of Florida, many baseball teams would come and have their spring practices. As a result, Aric got pretty close to some big teams, and said he liked to go shake their hands during spring training. Other kids wanted autographs, but he wanted to shake their hands and meet them. However, in his eye, the brightest star in sports was his grandfather, and of course, he wanted to race like he did. Young Aric got his kicks sitting in an idle car or helping scrape mud off the sprint car to make it presentable. He also liked to sneak into the pit area at races to see his father work on cars and get a front row seat for the event. At age 8, Aric finally convinced his grandfather and parents to allow him to race dirt karts. His grandfather agreed he would help support him as long as they worked on stuff together. Preparation and presentation were very important to him, and he wanted to instill this in his grandson as well. His grandfather says as soon as Aric sat in a kart, he was a natural. However, Aric says his first karting event took place at Lakeland Trial of a Kartway, and that weekend in practice in the heat race, he was terrible. He says he was trying to go full throttle and kept hitting hay bales lining the track, so much so his grandfather's friend nicknamed him Hay Bale Harry. Fortunately, that name didn't stick, because within a week he had won his first race at the track. He kept this momentum going, winning numerous races, track championships, and state championships. When around age 10, Aric's grandfather would retire from racing, and in order to help support his family's racing habit, he would build a dirt oval track known as Dirt Devil Speedway, in addition to his auto body shop. From ages 11 to 18, Aric spent multiple days out of the week working in the auto shop, learning how to weld, bend metal, and build his own cars. Then he would help prepare the dirt for events at his grandfather's track. His paychecks would turn around and be put back into his own racing efforts. Around the age of 14, Aric would graduate from his Catholic primary school and would attend Hillsborough High School in Tampa. In addition, he would graduate from local karting and begin competition at a national level. He would quickly make a name for himself by getting pole in his first race in the 1998 World Karting Association Grand Nationals at Daytona Beach. He would go on winning rookie accolades and finish 4th in the championship. After 2 years, Aric was looking to move up to open-wheeled modifieds on pavement. Originally, Aric's grandfather had mocked those who raced on pavement, saying asphalt was made for getting to the racetrack, not for racing. But as Aric showed his talent, Sam believed he could make it to NASCAR, and if he wanted to do that, he needed to stop learning bad habits from dirt and get in stock cars on pavement. In order to make racing cheaper, the Almirolas built as much as they could at home. At age 15, Aric recalls taking a shock building class alongside his grandfather. Then they bought a shock dyno, and Aric would build shocks for his car. He also became skilled enough to build and sell shocks to other teams for profit. At age 16, in the year 2000, he got his first chance racing machinery creating over 700 horsepower, and things went well. He won Rookie of the Year honors in both the Florida Modified and Southern Automobile Racing Association Modified Series, getting his first win at the Orlando Speed World Oval. 2 years later, he moved up to racing super late model stock cars in the Florida Sunbelt Division, finishing runner-up in the rookie standings. The following year, Aric would set a new series record by getting 6 pole positions across the season.
Like a glove! That is 20 years old.
By this point in time, financial support from the outside was few, and Aric had almost given up on the dream of becoming a NASCAR driver. He had started going to college at the University of Central Florida working on a degree in mechanical engineering. He thought if he couldn't race cars, he wanted to build them, and this was the best way to accomplish that. While at school, his mother saw an article in the newspaper describing a new program set up by NASCAR team owner Joe Gibbs and former NFL player Reggie White. This program aimed to help increase diversity in NASCAR by offering support to drivers from minority groups. Aric applied and became one of the first 2 drivers selected to the program that would later develop into the Drive for Diversity system. In order to accept the role, Aric needed to drop out of college and move nearly 9 hours away to North Carolina. Discussing it with his family, they encouraged him to draw inspiration from his grandparents. Take a chance and don't look back. In 2004, at age 20, Almirola would start his career with Joe Gibbs Racing, driving in the NASCAR Wheelin' All-American Series, scoring 2 wins, 6 top 5s, and 15 top 10s. By the end of the year, he would traverse the Southeast competing in late model series, getting 5 more wins. In addition, he would start 4 races in the NASCAR Truck Series, getting 2 top 10s. In 2006, Aric would compete full-time in the series for Spears Motorsports as part of the Gibbs Young Driver Development Program. He qualified for all the races and got 3 top 10s. He also took part in 9 races in the Busch Series in the number 19 Gibbs car. He served as a reserve driver for the team, taking over the duties of teammates Denny Hamlin and J.J. Yaley when they had schedule conflicts between the NASCAR Cup and Busch Series. As a result, he scored his first NASCAR pole position, qualifying the number 20 car at Milwaukee in absence of Hamlin, who would go on to complete the race. 2007 saw Aric completing a few races in the Truck Series, but 18 races for Joe Gibbs Racing in the Busch Series. Throughout the year, he would get 3 poles, 6 top 10s, 2 top 5s, and his first career victory at the Milwaukee Mile. Well, at least sort of. Just like the year previously, Almirola had qualified the car on pole in place of Denny Hamlin. Hamlin's helicopter was running late, so Almirola started the race and by lap 59 was running 3rd with the leaders. However, due to sponsorship commitments, at a caution flag, Almirola was told to get out of the car and make way for Hamlin. Denny went on to win the race, but because Aric started the car, he was accredited with the win. He didn't celebrate with the team as he'd already left the track declining interviews. Shortly after the Milwaukee fiasco, he announced he was signing with Ginn Racing, which sold to Dale Earnhardt Inc., to share their car with Mark Martin and compete in 5 races in the Cup Series. Meanwhile, he finished out his Joe Gibbs time in the Busch Series. In 2008, he'd do a race in the ARCA Series, a race in the Truck Series, and start and win a race in the ARCA East Series. More importantly, he'd share the number 8 DEI car with Mark Martin, doing 12 races that year, getting a best finish of 8th at Bristol. For 2009, Aric would be driving the car full-time in the Cup Series. However, after 7 races, the team couldn't keep sponsorship on the car and was shutting it down. Almirola filed a lawsuit against the team for breach of contract, and it was settled out of court. He then turned his attention back to the lower divisions. A few races in the Nationwide Series, and 16 races for Billy Baloo Motorsports in the Truck Series, getting 10 top 10s, 7 top 5s, and a stretch of 7 races, finishing better than 8th. By the end of the year, he would get an opportunity with Phoenix Racing for 2 races in the Cup Series, but would only qualify for 1. In 2010, he was selected to drive full-time for Phoenix Racing, but after only qualifying for 4 of the first 7 races, he parted ways with the team to focus on his Truck Series campaign that was going much better. Across the season, he would get 21 top 10s, 11 top 5s, and 2 victories, ultimately finishing 2nd in the championship behind Todd Bodine. Towards the end of the year, he would complete 8 races in the Nationwide Series for Junior Motorsports, getting 4 top 10s and a top 5. Meanwhile, in the Cup Series, he spent much of the year as a relief driver for a variety of teams. Near the end of the year, after Casey Kane was released from Richard Petty Motorsports following a team dispute, Aric would drive 5 races and finish 4th in the season finale at Homestead, Miami. Aric's performance at the end of 2010 made a good impression on the Petty team. However, for 2011, he was set to run the full Nationwide Series for Junior Motorsports. In this year, he would get a pole, 18 top 10s, 7 top 5s, and finish 4th in the championship. Potentially more important for his career, Aric started his extremely good relationship with his sponsor Smithfield Foods. During driver introductions at a race, he began to chat with the company's CEO, who had his young son at the track. Aric offered to bring the excited young boy along with him in the truck for the track ride to wave to the fans. His father appreciated Aric's personality and wanted to support him while he represented their brand. With the support of Smithfield and his reputation at Richard Petty Motorsports, Almirola was released from his Junior Motorsports contract to drive in the Cup Series full-time in 2012 after Allmendinger left the team. Finally, Aric would begin his full-time NASCAR Cup Series career. While driving for Petty, he would get the first win of the number 43 car since 1999, and it also happened to be the 30th anniversary of Richard Petty's 200th career victory. He spent 6 seasons putting in solid performances for a small, struggling team. In 2017, he would fracture his back in a crash, return to racing, and then be announced moving with his sponsor to fill the empty seat left by Danica Patrick at Stewart-Haas Racing for the next year. His first year with the team would be a career year. He nearly won the Daytona 500, won at Talladega, and finished 5th in the championship. Over the last few years, he would prove to be a consistent and reliable driver, making the NASCAR playoff system every year except the current, and add 2 more victories to his Cup career. At the beginning of 2022, Aric announced he was retiring from NASCAR competition by the end of the year in order to spend more time with his family and be a father. Over his career, Aric has proven to be a friendly guy, a good driver, and someone sponsors like working with. He set bowling world records with his sponsor Let's Go Bowling, and in an unheard of turn of events, Smithfield asked Aric to not retire. They wanted to continue to support him and have him represent their brand, so after working out a better way to have his family at the track, Aric has agreed to not retire. More than that, he has signed a multi-year contract with Stewart-Haas Racing where Smithfield has agreed to significantly increase their presence as the primary sponsor. If there are 2 things you can take away from his career, it's that sometimes truth is stranger than fiction, and nice guys don't always finish last. Sometimes they finish first, especially at superspeedways.
Yes! We did it!
Now, in making this video, I used some information and family clips from a mini documentary where Aric goes to visit his family in Cuba, and I have linked that thing in the description if you have an extra 20 minutes and want to watch that. It's pretty cool. But thanks for watching this, I really appreciate it. If you want more, be sure to poke around my channel for some other drivers and subscribe if you want to see what is next. Now, what is next is a driver who raced in Formula 1 and then made a pretty big splash in IndyCar through fuel saving in his rookie season. I also imagine he has a lot of distant relatives in Italy. So make a guess, and I'll see you next time on Driver Profiles.